Oh, right. Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is still connected. How you doing? Good to see you all. Thanks for joining me. We're live on Rockfin, YouTube, Callin, and on Twitter. And hey, people. Hey, hey, hey. How are you? How's it going, Osama? Got a couple folks filing in on Rockfin. That's good. That's cool. We're gonna try and make it kind of a quick show today. We're quicker moving, I guess. Um, Real quick, if you want to support this channel, and boy howdy, how I need your support. Um, there are several ways to do it, and my favorite way right now, if you tip me on Rockfin, I might not ever get it, or it'll be a long time before I get it because uh, I don't get it till the end of the month. They take 30% of it, and right now, gas fees on the token that they pay me in is on the Ethereum network, and the gas fees right now are like $60 to get. So I made $60 last month, and I can't even get it out because it cost me as much as I made to get it out. So I'm not getting that money. Just letting you know how that works. Um, Also, they take 30% of what you're giving me. Same with YouTube. It doesn't mean that I am trying to discourage you from tipping me there entirely. I'm just letting you know the realities of tipping me on Rockfin and YouTube, what it is about. The best ways to tip me are the ways that the money goes directly to me without getting everything cut out of it. And so if you want to support me in a timely manner and in a way in which I actually get the money that you're sending me, because it's kind of silly to support me and not actually me get the money that you sent me. And if you didn't know, you didn't know. I'm not trying to down anybody who's trying to support me in any way, shape, or form. I always appreciate all the support. Anyways, you can Zelle me at kevinsamblam at protonmail.com. That's super direct. PayPal me at paypal.me at Kevin Sambling. You can Cash App me too. All right, those are really cool ways to support. Thanks. Um, all right. By the way, so I'm gonna do this show. We're gonna talk a bit. We're gonna talk about the state of the planet. I'm gonna do my other show at 10, like right after the show is over. 10 o'clock. If anybody wants to watch the Octopus Files at 10 a.m. on the Octopus channel, and you can find the link on my Twitter channel, and also in the Telegram, the Black Bear News Chat Telegram. You can find the link there. So at 10, I'm just going to jump on over and do something there. Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, do we have some climate converts in the Texas Panhandle? I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good question. I was actually just listening to a show with somebody who lives and works in the Texas Panhandle. And how you doing? How you doing? Going South. What is the Octopus Show? It's a show where I just talk about like news and stuff. It's kind of dedicated and more controversial things. That's all. That's all it is. Um, it's another show I started a couple days ago, and it's only on Twitter. Only on Twitter. The only place you can watch it right now is on Twitter. All right. But you can find the link on my Black Bear News Twitter. Where are we at? Okay, let's keep going. I was just listening to a show with somebody who lives and works in the Texas Panhandle, and I mean, there is a lot of skepticism around why these fires started. What's the intent? Is there intent behind the fires? Which I guess, these are questions people have. I mean, I imagine there are converts. Absolutely. I imagine there are converts. I mean, I've said it many times. Farmers are well aware of climate change. There's always going to be people that are like, they're doing it to us, and whatever. That's a whole other conversation. We could talk about that. Probably talk about it on the other channel. But plenty of people understand that climate change is a real thing, and farmers are kind of in a direct line of the climate extreme weather events, right? Climate chaos, climate catastrophe. Anyways. Going South says, I have a very interesting conundrum with climate and ice. Ice putting an extra 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers of sea ice after a year of the hottest air and oceans in 125,000 years. How is that even possible? I don't know, man. Is there an extra 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers of sea ice? I don't know. Wendy DeLeese says partial blame goes to an electric power line spark, which started one of the recent Texas. And then there's that. Same with the Paradise famous fires in California, which were very devastating. And again, we can talk about the confluence of humans starting the fires through mismanagement or accident or infrastructure failures. But the climate being such that it allows the fires to burn much hotter, much faster. So I think that there are multiple things going on. And here's something along the lines of like Wendy DeLeese says a wooden pole was damaged in high wind, allowing live wires to drop down and hit the brush underneath. Yeah, I mean, these are good things to know, right? And Hawaii was started by power lines. Coincidence? Yeah. Again, I think there is a confluence of human, whatever you want to call it, mistakes, mismanagement, or even intention. Who knows? Mixed with the fact that the climate is different. The climate is different. It's warmer. Things are drier. We get extreme. We careen between extreme drought and these extreme rainfall events. So there's a lot of havoc, weather havoc going on, climate havoc going on. Anyways, Jem Bendell, and I actually meant to reply to him, and I am going to after the show. Here's evidence from 2022 suggesting an organic shift to climate skepticism prior to the possibly manufactured shift in 2022. So Sarah Connor puts this up. Who's behind the massive spike in climate skeptic tweets? The rise is too sudden to be explained by organic forces, more likely to be highly organized and compensated. Okay. That is a spike. That is a spike. I mean, we're talking about just tweets. Look at this spike here, though, pre-2020. That's pretty big. Then you have a, kind of a a pandemic lull where people just weren't even really paying attention to climate change much at all. And then you have, well, I think, okay, so I think there's a lot of things going on here. A lot of things. They may have taken the algorithmic brakes off of tweets that are have climate skepticism involved. The fossil fuel industry absolutely wants to foster this skepticism, and they've been funding it for a long time. It's been a long history of this manufactured skepticism, or I don't know, reticence. And then going south actually hits the next point I was going to say, which is no one trusts science anymore. So I think what Jem Bendell is trying to say is, like, look, there was a spike. There was a surge in 2022. There was actually a pretty big surge here. And I think what he's trying to point out is that there was an organic shift. They're trying to say that there's a manufactured skepticism. Maybe. And I wouldn't doubt it. I think it's just the fuel has been there for a long time, right? There's a manufactured skepticism fueled by the think tanks, fossil fuel companies that have been doing this for a long, that have been pushing this out for a long time. It's a famous trope of the right and the libertarian crew. And it's been that way forever, for decades, right? This climate change, whatever. They don't know what's happening. And now though, people don't trust what they're being told anymore. And so I actually think this spike is organic. I don't think that spike is manufactured. They're trying to say it's manufactured, but I think it's absolutely organic. I think it's just it's a fire from the tinder that's been there for a long time. And nobody, it's as I've been saying for a very long time, climate change is an extremely unpopular subject at the moment, even more unpopular than it's ever been. And one of the main reason being, and this is what, I was gonna reply to Jem Bendell. I don't want to get too far into this today, but Jem Bendell has pointed out correctly some of the strangeness around what was going on with COVID and the vaccines and stuff, and he got a lot of heat for that. Not only that, he got booted off Twitter for 7 months. So I think what he's trying to point out that there may be, and I feel like, I don't feel like this spike is manufactured, personally. Anyways. And on top of that, climate change is an unpopular subject because nobody wants to talk about it, because it's a hard it's just it's a thing that nobody wants to get down with. I mean, you're literally, what we're saying on this channel and what a lot of people who are well aware of what's going on with climate change are trying to convey to people is that we're in deep doo-doo. And not a lot of avenues out of the deep doo-doo, right? So not a lot of avenues out of the deep doo-doo. Nobody wants to have a conversation like that, and nobody it's a bummer. It's hard to keep playing the game of life, when the warning signs are blinking and flashing so red and so loudly that it kind of makes it very difficult to go on with the game of life. So, you know, humans don't like change, Basil. They don't like change. They don't like climate change. They don't like somebody telling them like, well, how you think life is supposed to go is not going to go that way pretty soon. Like nobody wants to hear that. Nobody. All right. Um, here's another something that I actually am going to talk about on my other show, and wanted to go into this, but this actually is a confluence. There are many things happening at once. Many things happening at once. We have, climate chaos really impacting supply chains and the normalcy that, impacting the Goldilocks zone in which most things operate. And once the Goldilocks zone starts to wobble and get a little shaky, then it's hard for things to continue as they did in the past, right? And when the climate Goldilocks zone doesn't allow for things to keep functioning the way they're supposed to function, well, then you're going to have impacts on other things like the economy or like the availability of food. Just, fairly, I think a fairly obvious and simple thought. Jem Bendell again, 4 in 10 parents skipped a meal in the UK to be able to feed their kids. 4 in 10. Probably worse now. The creeping collapse. I actually will probably talk about this in another video because this is important. But more than 4 in 10 of poorest parents skip meals to ensure kids do not go hungry. Poll finds. Families are selling belongings, cutting back on essentials to put meals on the table. Wow. Well, these are 4 in 10 lower income parents, so obviously not across the spectrum of economic spectrum. This is during the summer holidays, so this is last year. A poll done after last year. Steve Austin, kind of to follow up on that note, the climate crisis is accelerating so much that I've come to think that sea level rise is not going to impact us as much as many feared. Well, no, sea level rise is slow. Sea level rise is slow. But food system collapse is quick. Anyways, he's highlighting an article that's talking about sea level rise. He says, simply because the climate-induced food crisis will cause collapse long before sea level rise causes its disruption. Yeah. I mean, it's already starting to, of course. Sea level rise is already a thing that's happening and impacting people, but things, other things are going to unravel. I mean, just economic hardship, recession, downturn in itself kills a lot of people. Takes a lot of people out. Methane concentrations reach a record 1,934 parts per billion. An increase of 168% from pre-industrial levels. So a lot of people talk about CO2. Not a lot of people talk about methane rise. Not a lot of people talk about methane rise. And CO2 is up 50% from pre-industrial levels. But methane is up 150%. So much higher levels of methane in the atmosphere. This is already higher than the assumed peak of IPCC's mid-range scenario. Don't let anyone use bad assumptions to downplay near-term climate change. I think he meant to put another word there other than change. Near-term climate change. Scary study on plastics. David Wallace Wells tweeted this out. But we'll just go straight to the article. Microplastics could raise risk of stroke and heart attack. Stroke and heart attack. Doctors have warned of potentially life-threatening effects from plastic pollution after finding a substantially raised risk of stroke, heart attack, and earlier death in people whose blood vessels were contaminated with microscopic plastics. What? Researchers in Naples examined fatty plaques removed from the blood vessels of patients with arterial disease and found that more than half had deposits contaminated with tiny particles of polyethylene or polyvinyl chloride. Good Lord, those whose plaques contained microplastics or nanoplastics were nearly 5 times more likely to suffer a stroke, heart attack, or death from any cause over the following 34 months compared with those whose plaques were free. Well, how do you get free from plastic contamination in your plaques? I want my plaques plastic free. The findings do not prove that plastic particles drive strokes and heart attacks. What? People who are more exposed to the pollution may be at greater risk for other reasons, but research on animals and human cells suggests the particles may be to blame. Okay. So we found a correlation, but we're absolutely denying causation. I don't know. So again, there are confluences of all kinds of things happening. You know, so many people worried about the nefarious actions of the people in charge, and you should be. But, you know, we're slowly being poisoned by all the things we consume anyways. I think people are, you know, there's a concerted effort to get away from these poisons, obviously. Something's in the water. Yeah, that's where they're going next. I mean, but how are you going to tell? How are you going to tell? Right? Is it this? Is it that? If you have all these things being conflated, you know, you have the conditions in which fires and other things can happen. And you can kind of conflate, like, what's the cause and who's to blame and where did this come from and what, you know, then it puts everybody in a state of confusion, like what's really going on. And everybody's like, no, it's lasers. No, it's climate change. No, it's, right? Like, and everybody's, 100% sure that their conclusions that they jump to are the correct ones. But, what if it's several things all at once? And what do you do about that? I mean, they just basically said people who had plastic in their plaques were exposed to other things. Anyways. A man was prosecuted for smuggling. They're calling it greenhouse gases. I mean, I guess it is. But he's smuggling things that are illegal, that are not supposed to be, in your cars. But they've been saying, there was supposed to be this big agreement. And we fixed the ozone layer because the nations of the world came together to agree not to use these polyfluorocarbons. I don't even think I'm saying that right. But then in China, they're still making them, and they're still detecting that a lot of the, in places where they can't, there's not a lot of oversight. There's people still making these things. And here's a guy who's, obviously they're still making these things because he's smuggling them into the U.S. to sell them on the black market. And he got caught. California man is the first in U.S. to be charged with smuggling greenhouse gases. Prosecutors say. Michael Hart of San Diego was arrested on charges related to smuggling refrigerants from Mexico, violating regulations aimed at curbing greenhouse gases. Hart allegedly smuggled ozone-depleting chemicals concealed in his vehicle and sold them online, violating laws prohibiting the importation of hydrofluorocarbons without EPA approval. Oh, well, if the EPA approves it, then you're fine, right? I guess there's probably some companies out there that can totally sell these things because the EPA said, sure. You've greased our palms with enough money. I think you're okay. The indictment against Hart marks the first prosecution in the U.S. under the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act of 2020, emphasizing efforts to combat climate change. Huh. People want those refrigerants, You're just giving the people what they want. But how many other things out there, just absolutely horrible for the environment and for your health, are freely available. But I'm not saying that they shouldn't, absolutely they should not let these things, be released into the air and the atmosphere. Absolutely. These things should not be used. Absolutely. There should be regulations against this. Absolutely. They should enforce these regulations. I'm all for it. But it seems like there's a lot of other things they could probably, how about that? We could just go on down the list, right? What's a really good example of, like, who was it that said they can ban leaf blowers, but private jets have two, maybe three, right? And leaf blowers should be banned. Like, I hate leaf blowers. Like, I can't stand leaf blowers. They should be banned, but banning leaf blowers and then. But, people do need their private jets, right? Like, okay, make it make sense. Leaf blowers suck, but private jets suck even more. Suck way more than leaf blowers. But leaf blowers suck. So that's interesting. Let's see. Florida, in their attempts to be super libertarian and super anti woke, they go over the top sometimes. A lot of people moved to Florida during the pandemic because they liked the freedoms. Oh, that's cool. StreamYard, making things easy. Thanks, StreamYard. Anyways, Florida Senate passes bill blocking local rules protecting workers from heat. The legislation comes after the planet notched its hottest year in recorded history. Right? So they're just like, nah, we don't need to. This climate change is a hoax, and we don't need to save people from heat. But yeah, I think you do. I think you do. I think you should probably not let people pass out from heat, especially when it's getting hotter. Florida Senate on Tuesday approved a bill that would ban cities and counties from adopting requirements for mandatory water breaks and other workplace protections against extreme heat. Why would you do this? It doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense. I don't know. Maybe they have reasons. The Republican-controlled Senate voted 28-11 along party lines. It would prohibit local governments from determining workplace heat standards that go beyond those required by federal law. The bill would strip cities and counties of the ability to require water breaks for workers and time to rest in the shade throughout the day. I don't understand why you wouldn't want that. Nearly in the entire southern part of the U.S. last summer suffered weeks on end of oppressive humidity and triple-digit temperatures and a series of long-lasting heat waves that climate scientists said were intensified by global warming. And they just don't like that because, similar legislation was passed last year in Texas. Heat causes more deaths in the U.S. each year than any other weather event. And outdoor workers are among those most vulnerable to heat-related illness and death when temperatures spike. Anyways, it's not totally in effect yet. It's awaiting approval in the House before heading to Governor Ron DeSantis. Yeah, sometimes, that stuff just goes a little bit too far. You know what I'm saying? They done took it too far. All right. Let's see. I'll cover this and then we'll. I'm going to cover this and then I'm going to wrap it up. And then at 10 o'clock, I'll be on the other, on Octopus. All right? All right. Breaking, a federal court ruled 6-5 that multinational mining giant Resolution Copper's proposed destruction of Oak Flat, an Apache sacred site, is not subject to federal laws protecting religious freedom. Apache stronghold plans to appeal to the Supreme Court. It's important to know that there are two other pending legal challenges, one by the San Carlos Apache tribe and another by the Arizona mining reform coalition that have yet to be decided. So they're trying to block this mine. And the court was like, you know what? Let the mining commence. Steph C says, Kevin, I can see you here now too. Maybe the app changed. I think if you open the Twitter app, y'all can watch on Twitter and you can comment on Twitter and I can see your comments on the StreamYard, which is kind of cool. I can't comment back to Twitter though. However, I think it's the way in which you open the if you go to the, let's see if I can actually get you. So if you're just watching it in the video here, if you actually click on the post and like isolate the post, there's a little chat on the side. I can actually just go to the Twitter chat, and so I can't see your posts, Steph C. It's still a little weird on Twitter. There. New Day says it didn't work before, even in the app. Is that you, Steph? I can't tell you. I don't know. Anyways, New Day. No, I don't think that's it. Obsolete. New Day 2020 says it didn't work before, even in the app. Oh, that's Steph. Okay. So I can see that comment when I go to Twitter. It's still pretty wonky, but if you click on the actual video and isolate it in its own post, that little chat thing comes up. So that's good to know, right? You need to click on the video to run it and see the comment. Yes, exactly. So yes, if you guys want to, there, I'm seeing all your tweets, your remarks there now on the chat. So if you isolate the video, click on the video, isolate the video in its own little window, then you get the chat box on the side, which is cool. It's kind of cool. All right. I'll see you if you guys want to go over to the other channel, Octopus Files. Link on my timeline. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. Black Bears, appreciate you. Thank you all. Thanks for hanging out. See you tomorrow. Regular time. Until next time, peace.